everyone, and welcome to the last episode of Targeted Impact for 2020. Thank God this year is nearly over. This week we are joined with a very special guest who used to be sat where I'm sitting, Andrew McWhaw, who is the head of demand gen here at Wild Apricot. Hello, Andrew.
Hey, Ali. How's it going?
It's going good. It's very exciting to have you here and me presenting instead of sort of the other way around.
Yeah, this feels really weird being on this side of things. I gotta say. Hey, audience, if you're a returning guest, you may have remembered me from episodes 1 through 6 of Targeted Impact. Then I went and had a baby, and Allie took over, and she's just, I can't even get it back if I wanted to now.
So today, as everybody knows, we'll be talking about the membership growth report, all things growing revenue and membership growth. Andrew is the creator of this report and hopefully can answer all of your questions and help you with anything that you might have related to the report or any questions on growing your membership and growing your revenue. Andrew, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about the report for those that haven't seen it, and we'll put a little message with a link for those who haven't downloaded it yet.
Yeah, no, happy to. So this report is kind of like the cumulative knowledge of over 1,237 different associations, membership organizations within primarily the United States. 81% of the respondents came from the United States. We did have 37 different countries represented, so it's global, but primarily the US. And we just really wanted to know, how were these organizations growing? So it's a bit of a benchmark, how quickly they're growing, and what kind of are the inputs that affect their growth of membership, and then also their revenue, right? Because those are the two big components of any organization. How am I adding members to my organization, and how much money are we generating so that we can kind of achieve our goals? So it was really interesting to kind of go out, ask all these groups what they, how they were faring, and then kind of through the analysis of all that data collected, kind of see the trends of what's working, what's not.
Amazing. I found the report super helpful, so I'm hopefully all of our audience did as well. While we wait for our audience to ask questions, because this is a live Q&A, so pop your questions that you want Andrew to answer in the question box. I will start with a question that I've been dying to ask. Your report showed that even during the good times, which of course is pre-COVID, growing membership was difficult. Why do you think that was, and what do you think that now means during this pandemic?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the exact figure I think we quoted as 68% of organizations have difficulty growing. So what does having difficulty growing mean? It means they were growing between 1% and 5% or less. When I say less, there were organizations in this report that were shrinking, that had no growth. In fact, the no growth group, I think, was the largest group we had. 11% of organizations said they were shrinking, which is crazy to think about. So why, in a world pre-COVID, because a lot of this analysis was based on what was going well in 2019 leading up to 2020, why did those organizations in a boom time still have trouble with growing membership? I think it's the nature of membership-based organizations. Most of the times these do not function like businesses, right? There's a lot of volunteer hours involved. There's a lot of passion projects involved. And so what you would do to grow an organization or a business, and how you grow an organization that's membership-based, a lot of the same things apply, but people approach the two very differently, right? So if you're not approaching growing your membership or growing your revenue with the same rigor you would growing your small business, you're going to run into you're going to run into challenges that anyone else would, right? You're not going to attract members or customers, and you're not going to grow your revenue. And I think that's what we're seeing a lot in the report. So what I'm hoping that means for COVID is organizations are probably feeling an even tighter squeeze, and they can start thinking about, okay, well, what do I have to do to transform my business, to start approaching it or thinking about it differently, that really is going to drive home on achieving my mission, and by achieving that mission through membership growth and revenue growth.
Amazing. So Catherine has a question which pivots straight off the back of this, that says, are organizations finding decreasing memberships as baby boomers age?
Yeah, so one of the things we discovered in the report was that older organizations had some of the greatest difficulty growing. And if you think about that, a lot of the times that is because older organizations generally tend to attract an older demographic, right? And the tactics you use to engage with an older demographic are very different than what you would use to engage with a younger demographic. So speaking from personal experience, because I also, in addition to working in this space, I also run my own association. When I think about my older members, there are individuals who really only want to pay with cash, who don't want to even receive an email update, would rather a telephone call. When you think of a younger member, someone who's in their 20s who you're trying to attract, the very inverse is true, right? They don't even know what cash is, and they definitely do not want a phone call unless someone has died. Just do not call them. So the tactics you use are very dependent on the age group, and a lot of times we favor tactics that are focusing on older demographics because we don't think about the younger demographic as much because they also generally have less time and less disposable income for sure.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. We actually did a webinar, Andrew, you know this, on how to engage millennials and Gen Z in your fundraising plans, which was 2 weeks ago. So Catherine, be sure to check that out, and hopefully you can find some tips and tricks on how to engage those younger audiences. Rick would like to know, how do you get lapsed members back?
Ooh, that's a great question. It's actually not something we specifically covered in the report itself. Lapsed members were not one of the growth channels we asked about. That being said, it's a great question. So let's try and dive into this a little bit. So what does it mean when someone lapses? Well, it means that whatever you were offering as a value to that individual either no longer has that same amount of value to them, or potentially they still value it, but something else has captured their attention, right? In my case, it would be a baby. In other people's, it's their jobs. So what you can look at is maybe tiers of membership, right? So maybe someone doesn't have time to be a full member, right? Especially if your organization is very active, you're a community group that gathers once a week or something like that. But maybe there's another way of an individual to contribute to that association. So what I would say is first determine why that person has lapsed, right? Now, if you have an organization which has tens of thousands of members, your churn is going to be higher. But if you're in a smaller organization, there is nothing that's stopping you from reaching out. If you're really small, an email, a phone call, make it something you do on a Sunday afternoon and get that information. Maybe there's a way to explore a lower tier of membership directly with the individual. Or if you're more mid-sized and you don't really have that, there's a lot of free tools you can go out, or really low-cost tools you can do for surveying, things like SurveyMonkey. If you're a Wild Apricot user, we have polls, so you could definitely create a poll for lapsed members and just get a sense as to why they left, and then determine whether or not they have an interest of coming back. And then those are the people you really can reach out to, and you can just build a whole program around that. So that would be my advice there.
That's some great advice. Just to summarize what I heard there, Andrew, was reach out to the lapsed members, find out why they are leaving, potentially introduce a tier system, and that should be a great stepping stone. So Rick, I hope that you found that information helpful. We have a question here from Matthew that says, why do some organizations try to avoid growing?
Yeah, that was one of the really interesting parts of this report. It was finding that there's a lot of organizations, well, not a lot, it was I'm trying to remember the exact figure. I think it was like somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 20% of organizations just said, we don't want to grow. And I think that's because a lot of organizations, as we touched upon earlier, are smaller volunteer-based organizations. If you imagine that if you grow large enough, the hour you spend in the morning answering your organization's emails or putting up a new post on your website, on your blog, that's going to become really difficult if you have to scale up, or if you assume you're going to have to scale up the same rate as your membership or revenue scales up. Now, the good news is that, well, actually there's double good news. So I'm going to start with the first one. The first one is, even if you're not trying to grow, but if you're a really valuable association, people are going to try and join anyway. So unless you're willing to literally turn away members or turn away donations, those people are still coming in. So that's good news, right? If you are having a problem where you don't want to grow and people are still coming to you, that's a good problem to have. The second piece of good news is that thanks to a lot of technology solutions, you can scale along with your business, and it's not even one-to-one. You can, one person's effort can scale out 10 times, something like that, right? I'm not giving you an exact figure. I'm just paraphrasing here, but or off the cuff giving an example. But if you are using the right technology solutions, you should be able to match that growth, right? So if you're an organization that's currently keeping track of all your members in an Excel document, or heaven forbid, like a notebook, there are solutions out there that will allow you to, more easily manage your membership. The last thing I want to point out is if you're an organization that's saying, I don't really want to, I really don't want to grow. I'm going to tell you and kind of harken back to that first piece of good news. If you're good, you're going to grow anyway. So I would definitely advise you to take the time and figure out, okay, how do I grow smart? Because you don't want to grow stupid and then make a mistake and offend your members or anything like that. So if you're growing, just figure out how to make it work for you.
Amazing. And that segues in beautifully to a question from Lorenzo that says, what are some proven ways to accurately project membership growth?
Yeah, so one of the things we asked in the report itself was, what are the tactics you're using and how successful you are? And so we found that, three tactics really stood out at the top of the heap for attracting members. One was a refer a friend tool, right? So whether that's, a campaign where you actually ask your members to refer a friend, or digitally like put your neighbor's email in here and we'll send them a promo email asking them to join or inviting them on your behalf. Those were actually the most effective. And that kind of makes sense. When you think about any kind of sale, word of mouth is the best. I'm using the term sale here, but it's kind of like a sale, right? Joining an organization, signing up and paying your membership dues, that is a sale in one form. So Ali, if you tell me, hey, this is the pizza place to go to, that's going to carry a lot more weight than if I Google best pizza place in my neighborhood. I just trust you a lot more than I trust Google. Uh, so that's one way. The other two we found were purely digital tools. Website and email were the second and third best ways to attract members. So if you have a membership organization and aren't actively using members or email to attract new members, right? So maybe you have a mailing list, but you're not really sharing the benefits of membership, or everyone on your mailing list gets like 95% of the benefits of being a member, and you're only gating 5% of what your organization does. Maybe think about that a different way. Your mailing list gets people in the door, but you really push on that membership level. I was astonished when I was doing this for my organization and we were building up and scaling up, how effective just kind of reminding people that, hey, we have a membership-based organization and this is what your membership does for this organization. This is why it's important. I really tied it to the mission and vision of the organization. And within, I think, 30 days of starting to collect dues, we were over 80% of our mailing lists paying. So I was like really surprised by that. And then the third one, website. If your website is not giving a clear indication as to why people should join, what their options are for joining, those are things to really focus in on, because people are going to do their research and make a decision without consulting you. The ones who consult you, that's great, but the rest may just make a decision. So do everything you can up front to say, this is the reason why you should be here.
And Andrew, you have been setting this up beautifully, because our next question is from John that says, what aspects of web design are most important for his virtual yacht club in obtaining new younger members?
Ooh, okay. That's a very specific question, John. Okay, so what web design features are important specifically to attract younger members? Okay, let's piece through this, because this is not an easy question. John's really put me on the spot here. So I would argue that elements of good web design, so your layout, your information, doesn't there isn't a way to kind of tweak it just for a younger demographic, unless you want to alienate the rest of your demographic. One way of approaching this is, you may have your homepage, but what you can do is you can create individual landing pages, right, that are specific to certain certain demographics. So your younger group, right? and they can, the imagery you use, the language you use, all those things would be, encapsulated on that page. And then, what you can do is when you get people land on your homepage, you just make sure that, they have, all that standard information that's really important for them to be able to read about. But, you can put a big call to action banner like right in the middle, like here's your load screen, then like right underneath, you know, are you under 35 and interested in the yacht club? Check this out. Uh, and then direct them where you want to go and highlight the things that are relevant to them. As far as what goes on the page, I would ask your younger members that you already have. And if you don't have any younger members, go out and find some people who are interested in yachting under 35. I guarantee there's a youth yachting Facebook group that you can sneak into somehow and ask a few questions. So that'd be what I'd go with.
I agree. As somebody a little bit younger than you, Andrew, sorry for throwing that out there, but I would say, John, keep your website simple, make it easy. We are very distracted these days. We're very busy. And if it's as easy as possible to sign up and get the information that you're trying to give, then you've got a better chance of millennials sticking around.
Oh, one other idea that I would just shout out. Sorry, Allie. If you're looking for some inspiration, go and look at some websites that are not about yachts, but specifically targeted that demographic, and kind of borrow, liberate a few of their nice design elements and emulate them. What is it? Not copying is the most sincere form of flattery. Imitation. There we go. Imitation is the most sincere form of flattery. And also, I'd give a huge shout out to video because, as Ali has put it, if you have a wall of text, yeah, no one who's a millennial is going to pay any attention to that.
Thank you for that. Jennifer would like to know, we're going to put you on the spot again here, Andrew. What ideas do you have for how organizations can increase revenue without increasing membership fees?
Oh, I love this question. You said it was from Jennifer, right? Jennifer, thank you for this. So one of the really cool things we found in the report, it was the most successful organizations for growing revenue looked beyond their membership, right? So I think it was the first question we addressed where we were talking about, or maybe it was the second, we were talking about how do we get or re-engage with lapsed members. All those lapsed members at some point paid to be part of your organization, so maybe they would still like to report it or support it. So that's one avenue. There are streams like having kind of a swag store. So for those members of yours who really love and enjoy your group, purchasing something that shows that appreciation. One of the other interesting findings is we found that between donations and events and how different organizations raised revenue, that some of the most effective tactics were underused based on the organization type. So for example, associations are really, or their highest funding channel is usually their dues, but the organization or the associations that accepted donations as well found an extremely successful tool. So that means that there were a lot of associations that don't even look at donations, but those that did were just found it to actually be really helpful. So speaking from my own experience, my organization has a really low membership fee. We come from, we're a neighborhood association, so we have a very diverse group of residents that we pull from. So, we have some mansions in the neighborhood. We have some, post World War II homes that, are 800 square feet. And so we put a really low fee and we said, hey, but if you'd like to give us a little bit more, we'll accept it. We've generated 3 times our revenue from those donations than we have from our membership dues. So I would definitely give that one a shout out too.
Wow, yeah, absolutely. Open it up for donations. You have a live example with your own association that works really well. So hopefully, Jennifer, you'll find that helpful. Diane would like to know, why do older organizations, independent of size, have a harder time growing?
Yeah, so I think this is a reflection of that younger-older divide we have spoken about twice already. And older organizations generally are more well recognized by older individuals. And when you're like older, you're you have how would I put it? How you are viewed and thought of by those people external, those people who you'd like to attract, is really well formed, right? Um, if I think about the Red Cross, I have a very set idea of what the Red Cross is, right? Whereas a newer organization, a younger organization, they can be a little bit more fluid. And with those very set ideas in place, people may not, if they don't align with a person's beliefs or interests, they just may not even consider the organization. Whereas, or sorry, may not consider the organization or wanting to be part of it because of those preconceived notions. Versus if they, or sorry, even if an organization, has kind of some new branding and new program, something that'd be really relevant to that individual, they're not even going to consider it because they're like, hey, yeah, I already know all about you. You're like, no, wait, there's something new here that you should check out, but you're already past that part. So I'd say for older organizations, they really need to kind of like shake it up. It's a bigger challenge for them, and they really got to make a push for those to shake loose those preconceived notions, right? So you maybe have to go a little bit extra on what you do if you're trying as an older organization to attract newer members.
I absolutely agree. I think it's very important for all organizations, but especially older ones, to focus on branding and marketing, just to make sure those preconceived notions aren't there. So that's some really great advice. Gordon would like to know, my organization has found door-to-door recruitment super helpful. Why do you think it was found to be so unpopular in the survey?
Yeah, so I think there was a couple of things. One, it was like the least used tactic by any group. So when you're, even with 1,200 plus organizations responding, if I think it was like 8 or 10% of organizations, so somewhere in the 100 to 120 range using it, if a chunk of those found it unsuccessful, like that's going to swing those success metrics much more than if it's 1,000, right? So there could be a sampling issue in the results. The other thing I would say though is it's a tactic that's probably really, really right for some organizations, for instance, neighborhood association, but probably a more difficult fit for other ones, right? I like to support my local hospital, but I will say I don't love it when they knock on my door at like 6 p.m. on a Friday. I'm trying to have dinner, so if you're if you're going to do it, I would say really pick your spots and have a thick skin.
Carl would like to know, as are professional societies and non-profits becoming obsolete in this day and age with networking via social media? In the past, these organizations offered networking and access. Now it's all virtual and open to everybody.
Yeah, I would say that no, they haven't, because people still love the opportunity to get together, especially when associations are going to give you like some free food and some drinks and stuff. But even okay, like let's say it's a dry place and there's not a whole lot of budget for some snacks. People just love that face-to-face engagement. Of course, we're living in COVID, so that's really makes it more difficult. We're almost forced to do that digital networking. But let's for a moment pretend that we're dealing in a world where we can have that face-to-face networking opportunity. Um, that is still so essentially important to so many individuals. Further to that point, I would say that think about your own LinkedIn. How many times do you get requests from individuals who just want to chat with you, or send you like the generic, hey, I'd like to join your network thing, versus someone who reaches out to you and say, hey, can we grab a coffee, right? There's the commitment, the interest levels are massively different. Um, it's really easy to connect with people on social. I think it's really difficult to make those connections meaningful. To the individuals who make those connections meaningful, like kudos to you. But I think for the vast majority of individuals, the bonds they're going to be able to make through an association is still a lot, or still highly valuable, and something that most people will still want.
Keith would like to know, is it better for an association newsletter to be strictly member only, or to be available to anyone who opens the website?
Yeah, it's a great question. I guess it's where, so I'm going to get back to this question of value is, what is the value that your organization's delivering, right? So if the newsletter and what it provides, like me, I don't know, maybe you're an organization that's of a particular association type, so you may do job listings, that's probably highly valuable. Whereas if it's kind of like a update on, like what's new in your club, like what activities are open, that one was probably good to go to all your contacts, because those are individuals who you want to sign up through your club. So I would think about where the value lies in your organization. If the newsletter is something that's highly valuable, then I would make it member only. What I would do though is if it's highly valuable and member only, I would try and find a way to do like a really pared down version and still send that to your contacts so they stay engaged and interested in you. And then, every now and again be like, and here's what the full newsletter looks like, right? And hopefully I'll convince some people to move from contact to member.
Absolutely. So let me just pull up this question here. John would like to know, why do you think in the report you discovered that 1 in 2 organizations failed to grow revenue year over year?
Yeah, I think that's a function. Oh, growing membership's hard, and if you have difficulty growing membership, growing revenue is also going to be hard, because usually members equals revenue to some extent. I mean, it's not one to one. There's a formula there, and it depends on your organization, but that's definitely part of the puzzle. The other part of the puzzle, though, is that I think a lot of organizations don't think of themselves as being out to generate revenue, right? They think of in terms of their mission, and that mission could be something like a nonprofit wanting to do something around food banks, or it could be clubs and getting people to all get together and play a sport, or chess. If anyone saw, wait, why am I blanking on the name of that show? It was like the most popular show on Netflix in the last year, Queen's Gambit. There you go. So everyone wants to like play chess now because of Queen's Gambit. So they think in those terms, right? How do I get people to do this? They don't think about, well, if I had more revenue, I could do more for food banks. Or if I had more revenue, I could maybe throw like a tournament where people don't have to pay to join. They could just come and play for some prizes, because they love chess, right? That's not the terms we think about, right? We think about the mission before how we fund the mission. And so I think that's what a lot of organizations run into, right? They're so focused on achieving their mission that they fail to realize that revenue mission link. Another part of it is, I think there's a lot of times where organizations don't want to think of themselves in terms of revenue generation. Like there's almost like I don't want to do that. We're out to help the world. We're not really out to bring in money, even though that money makes it a lot easier to help the world. So I think that's kind of a ingrained fear of a lot of organizations that they just need to get over. And one of the ways they can do that is by clearly communicating how whatever money they bring in gets reinvested in their organization. Really famously, case study, the person who founded water.org, hopefully people on this call have heard of them. When he first started out with water.org, he created 2 revenue streams. One was for the operations of the organization, which was we need this money just to pay our staff, to do the campaigns and programs that we do. And they had a second revenue stream, which was 100% of the money that goes into it goes out to the programs. And he arrived at this point where he had no money in his operating budget and a ridiculous amount of money, like if I recall correctly, in the millions for the projects. So the challenge there is, right, how do we get this done versus what are we doing? So in that case, the way it was resolved is he went out to some very wealthy donors and said, we can't even spend the money on the programs we want if we do not have our operating budget. And a few wealthy individuals, I think it was actually like one or two, kind of put the operating budget. But if you're not in that position, you don't have millions of dollars to spend, I would just clearly communicate how by funding the organization, this is what you're achieving. And maybe you give your members, your pay members, like a revenue report, right? This is what the amount of money we raised, this is how we spent it. And that transparency will go a long way in convincing people that their money is being well spent and towards the mission of the organization.
Transparency is definitely key. Maggie would like to know, your study found that organisations that reported less success were using the same tactics as the ones that were successful, but they just used less overall. What does this mean?
Yeah, so that was one of the interesting findings for a couple of reasons. One, it means that there is no secret sauce. I can't say to everyone on this call, we found that if you host events and invite clowns, that you generate 50% more member signups or revenue or anything like that. The clowns are not the answer. Um, what it does mean is that the organizations that are finding success are spending or doing a variety of activities. On average, I think 2 more activities or 2 more tactics to generate members in this case. So it means you're going to have to kind of expand and try new things and then stick with the ones that work, right? So I think on the list we had 17 tactics that people can look at. So I would look at the the top performing ones and start there. And if you're missing any of those, I would put some effort into building those out. And if you are, and then once you kind of got all those figured out, I'd go onto the lower tier and kind of go in order. And you may find that a tactic that overall has a lower efficacy will work better for your organization. So it's really about kind of trying and find your own secret sauce because every organization is a little bit different.
Trial and error is how we operate with our marketing department. So I'm sure with associations and nonprofits, if you guys give it a try as well, you will definitely see some success.
Hey, if it works for Amazon, it's got to work for everyone, right?
Kevin has asked, your report showed several examples of organizations not using the best possible revenue generating tactics available. What do you think? Why do you think there's a disconnect?
Yeah, so this is kind of a throwback to what we discussed earlier, where there were, for instance, associations not accepting donations, right? When we found it was actually a highly effective tactic. I think there are certain tactics within the membership space that specific subgroups like nonprofits, not like associations, like clubs, will just not think of as being relevant to them, right? And so part of the secret sauce, if there is a secret sauce, is to kind of go out of your comfort zone and find something that is not traditionally used in your space and see if you can make it work. And hopefully this report guides some people to some of those kind of opportunities that are underrepresented and over effective compared to other tactics that they're more commonly using.
I apologise if anyone can hear that train that's just going past. That was unexpected, so I'm sorry if you can hear that. We have a question, this might be a bit of a curveball, Andrew, but Carolyn would like to know, what are the better digital tools for a website that help keep members actively engaged?
Yeah, so thanks, Carolyn. I'm assuming this question means engaged on the page, and if you mean just engaged in general, just let me know and I'll clarify my question. But yeah, this is kind of like the how do you win at Google, right? How do you keep people on your page longer? So this isn't specific to the membership space. This is just good digital marketing. So definitely having video is always seen as a huge win. It keeps people engaged much longer on a page. So I wouldn't say go out and drop a video on every single page on your website, but the pages that are most important to you, so either the ones that are generating the most traffic or generating the most interest in your organization, try and find a video, or try and produce a video rather, that makes sense to place on that page in context, and that will kind of overall boost engagement with that page. Other things that could be that are worth trialing are, is there a way to put a call to action on that page so that people can get something relevant to the content on that page? So for example, if you're, we'll go to the sailing organization we were talking about earlier. If this is a page all about the gear you can or you should have when you are starting out sailing, right? Creating a downloadable list that people could just click on, maybe provide some information and download that would be ideal. That's a good way of doing that. Other things are if you have pop-up technology, you can, when people are losing interest, when they kind of scroll to that corner to like exit, pop up, hey, exit intent. Have you thought about signing up for our newsletter? There's more great content, things of that nature. Those are all tools that are pretty successful in keeping people on the page longer.
We have a couple of questions coming up that are a little bit specific, Andrew, so I'm sorry for putting you on the spot yet again.
No worries.
But Grant says he runs a small gardening club. So when he was reading the report, he saw that smaller organisations faced greater difficulty maintaining or growing revenue, and he was very worried. Why is this, and what can he do to make sure that his organisation isn't one of these?
Yeah, I think that finding kind of just speaks to, it's difficult to get started. I think it's something like 1 in 10 startups fail, or sorry, 9 out of 10 startups fail, and then 1 out of 100 succeed in like making it to the point where they get investment. In this instance, we're not talking about a startup, we're talking about an organization, but the same rule kind of proves true, where a lot of people start an organization, try it for a year, it kind of sputters and they give up, or they see low growth and decide that it's just not worth it. So that's just the initial hump you got to get over. Now, what can you do to get over that hump? Well, I would definitely look at the tactics for both membership and revenue growth and see if those are something that you can do yourself. Beyond just like the tactical side of things, finding other people who are really passionate about the project. If it is a one-person show right now, find your board, right? Once you get your board going, you have a lot of allies who are also invested in getting your organization going. And if you, if you don't have your board yet, but you have just like some passionate members, maybe you have your board and you can leverage other passionate members who are not board members to kind of keep the organization growing, right? Like leverage your boosters as best you can would be my advice. And you'll eventually kind of find yourself that, in a couple of years, you're in a gardening group. You may not be as the largest gardening group in the country, but you'll still be in a pretty good spot. Oh, and I would say figure out exactly what you want to achieve. That's just kind of good guidance, right? What is it that you see your gardening group growing to? What is it that you want to achieve? And then based on whatever that goal is, you can adjust what you do.
Yep, that's great. Just have a very clear mission and use that as your guidance. So we have time for one more question. This hour has flew by, as always. And this is from Jordan that says, on your list of popular tactics, you have booths at events and refer a friend programs. How do we adapt these tactics in a world where in-person get-togethers are no longer possible?
Yeah, so that's really interesting. So let's touch on the booth one first. So in the standard operation, the way this would work is you'd have a some kind of event relevant to your organization, and you would hopefully either ask for one for free because you have a really wonderful mission and people would like to give you some space, or you pay a little bit of money to get there. A lot of events have moved online, and so and not only have they moved online, like there are large events, but there are also smaller ones as well. So in the event of large events, what you can do is say, hey, can we be listed as a sponsor of it? Can we give a talk if there's some kind of talking opportunity event? How can we essentially recreate that space there? And in the event of smaller events, like webinars and things like that, it's quite often that you can say, hey, like, can I be on the webinar and have my organization speak for 5 minutes before or after? Now, if you don't want to spend money on that, the easiest way is to do it via partnership. So if your organization can run its own digital event, likely the people whose events you would go to and set up a booth, they would still like to talk to your audience, right? So create that transaction. You speak for me, or speak at my event, I'll speak at your event, and we both grow together. So that would be what I'd say there. For the refer a friend, yeah, it's really nice to be able to bring your friend to like your association's meet and greet, and everyone enjoys like a glass of wine and some cocktails or whatever. Or I was actually thinking cocktail shrimp. You shouldn't have wine and cocktails. Geez, sounds like alcoholics. So you get some free shrimp or whatever. You can't do that, but if people know individuals who would be a good fit for the organization, just give them the tools they need to essentially inform their friends who would be a good fit of the organization, right? They're going to be your best salespeople anyway. So just give them the tools they'll need to bring people aboard. And maybe you make it a two-way incentive, right? Hey, if you bring a new member, we're going to knock off X% of your membership fee, right? That's a way to both activate your most active members, get them involved, and also reward them for their involvement.
Thank you, Andrew. Here at Wild Apricot, as you know, we take our own advice, and jumping off the back of what you've just said, we have our own customer referral race running at the minute, where you can earn up to $1,400 a month per every customer. With every customer you refer, the customer you refer will also receive 1 month free, and there's also up to $1,000 in prizes if you can refer the most amount of people while this race is on. We'll send the link in the box now to our customer referral program. You can see how we're doing it, refer your friends, and hopefully you can sort of see and picture what we're doing, and you can do it yourself, because we like to take our own advice. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us this week. It's been super useful, very insightful, and it was a pleasure having you on.
Yeah, thanks so much, Ali. I appreciate you putting the questions to me and running this whole show. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I just want to say to the audience, thank you so much for having me, for your great questions. I really enjoyed kind of giving you my best advice possible, and hopefully you found it valuable. And I would really recommend everyone who's on this, if you signed up, just go check out the report. For your name and your email, you'll get 33 pages of insights on how to better grow your membership and your revenue. So go check it out.
Amazing. And to the audience members, please fill out the survey. It's a quick 2 minutes at the end of this webinar, so we can keep bringing you content to help your organizations thrive. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good one.